Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Marion City Council combined meeting for Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. If you'd please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please show all council members present. Next up, we have approval of the minutes. We have the approval of the minutes for September 4th, 2024, September 9th, 2024 regular meetings, and the revised minutes for the August 7th, 2024 workshop and the September 11th, 2024 special meeting. Any questions, comments, concerns regarding that?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Carries. Next up, we have reception of delegation, Delon and Stain, Michelle Mills, and Addie Blickenstaff, presentation of fiscal year 2024 audit. Sorry if I butchered any names.
No, that's right on. All right, Dan's gonna pull it up here. He just had it up.
Dan, they were asking if you want to bring up the...
Oh, there we go.
Good evening. Thank you for having us this evening. I'm Michelle Mills, Audit Principal with DeLeon and Stang, responsible for overseeing this year's audit.
And hi, everyone. My name's Addie Blickenstaff. I am an audit manager at DNS, and I was the main day-to-day contact who interacted with Barry and her team.
All right. I believe each of you have a complete copy of the draft audit report in your packet. And this evening, we've prepared a PowerPoint presentation of what we think are important takeaways from the audit. And again, we're here to answer any questions that you might have. So our first slide gives some general audit information. Management is responsible for the financial statements. We, as your auditor, are responsible for planning the audit, performing the audit, and making sure that the financial statements are not misstated and issuing an opinion on the financial statements. We are proposing an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which means that the statements were fairly stated in all material respects, a clean audit report. We found that all transactions were properly supported. There were no new accounting pronouncements that were required to be adopted in this particular year. We encountered no difficulties in performing the audit, and there were no disagreements with management. As always, we like to thank Barry and her team for being always prepared and responsive during the audit. There were no material audit adjustments detected based on our audit procedures. We did identify one significant deficiency in internal controls, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. The city was also subject to an alternative compliance examination due to your ARPA expenditures. Again, this is not new. You were subject to that last year and will again next year as you spend down the remainder of your ARPA funding. This next slide gives a government-wide perspective. Again, when you're looking at the audit report, there's two sets of financial statements. There's the government-wide presentation and fund level. So this slide is the city combined. The government-wide total assets were just over $53.6 million. The government-wide total liabilities were $13.4 million. And the difference between your assets and your liabilities is your net position, which was $38.9 million, of which $7.2 million is restricted for future capital infrastructure and a loan reserve. Overall, in fiscal year 2024, there was a change in net position of an increase of $3 million. A couple key footnotes we like to highlight. The city's cash deposits were fully collateralized as required by state law. The city did contribute to the Maryland State Retirement and Pension System, approximately $294,000 on behalf of the employees. Your total debt payments due within the next year are about $945,000. Your ARPA funding expenditures were just over $2.3 million in fiscal year 2024, and you have approximately $1.9 million available for next year. Okay, that's the next slide. Turn it over to Addie.
Here's a quick pie chart that shows that 53.6 million of your total assets broken into its major categories. Again, this is government-wide, so this would be both your general and utility type activities. As you can see by the large green, 35.8 million or 67% of your total assets represent the capital assets held by the city, which is net of accumulated depreciation. If we head to the right, you'll see our two cash-related buckets. The darker blue color represents unrestricted cash and cash equivalents of 8.8 million or 16% of the total, with restricted cash right underneath of 14% or 7.6 million. If we head towards the left-hand side of the pie chart, you'll see your overall receivables or amounts due to the city at year-end were 1.3 million or comprising 3%, and then a small other asset balance of about 74,000. On the opposite side of our assets is the liabilities of the city, which again, as Michelle mentioned, were $13.4 million at June 30. Your debt obligations comprise 68% of that total, which is just under $9.2 million. The net pension liability is just over $3 million or 23% at year end. Accounts payable and accrued expenses represent 8% or just over $1 million, and a small $138,000 other liability balance.
Now we're going to focus a little bit on the general fund. A couple key points to take away. Fund balance is required to be reported in 5 different buckets. At the end of fiscal year 2024, the city had 4 of those. Your non-spendable was a small amount, about $45,000, and that represented prepaid expenses, costs that were paid in advance. Committed was just under $280,000, and that represented park impact fees. Your assigned balance at the end of fiscal year 2024 was just over $39,000, and that included the police asset forfeiture and the remaining balance on your non-cancelable lease obligations. And then the remainder is your unassigned, which was just about $3.5 million. Your general fund total revenues were about $7.3 million, and that was a 10% increase over the prior fiscal year. Your general fund total expenses were $8.4 million, which was an increase of $1.8 million or 28%. Overall, there was a deficiency of $1.1 million versus the prior year, where there was actually a positive number of $33,000, and we'll go over that a little bit later.
Yep, so here we'll see the general fund revenues in a bar graph comparing FY23 and FY24 across the major categories. So as you can see, the general fund taxes remained at about 4.3 to 4.4 million. Rather small licenses and permits figure ranging from 125,000 in 2024, which was a small decrease from 132,000 in 2023. The city's intergovernmental revenues of the general fund did see a significant increase during fiscal year 24 related to park grants and ARPA funding expenditures. Service charges were relatively flat year over year, as well as other revenues. If we look at the expenses of the general fund, you'll see we're reporting it by department on the bottom. So general government was relatively comparative year over year. Public safety saw a slight increase of about $200,000. Public works, again, similar $200,000 increase from fiscal year 23. And the large driver of that expense increase was in your recreation and culture bucket as it related to the Bollinger Park project. Economic development remained flat, as well as your debt service payments, which represent principal and interest of the general fund.
Now we're going to turn our focus to the utility fund. The first item is the total net position for the utility fund was $24.7 million. $14.2 million of that was invested in capital assets. As mentioned, the loan reserve was just over $26,000. Restricted for future capital infrastructure at the end of fiscal year 2024 was $7.2 million, and the remaining balance is reported as unrestricted at $3.3 million. The utility fund had operating revenues of $3.2 million, and again, a slightly small decrease from fiscal year 2023. The total operating expenses were $3.6 million, and again, that was an increase from the prior year of about $394,000. Total non-operating revenues was $1.6 million, which included $1.2 of your ARPA grant, and $65,000 related to benefit assessments. Your interest income for fiscal year 2024 was $395,000, which was up significantly over prior years due to improved market. Your total non-operating expense, which was interest expense, was just over $310,000. And overall, the utility fund showed net income of $915,000 compared to $1.8 million in the prior year.
Similar to the general fund, we're just showing a quick snapshot of the utility fund revenues amongst its various revenue categories. Charges for services remained flat at about $3 million year over year, as well as the rental income remaining in the $150,000 range. Intergovernmental revenues, which would be your ARPA funding, did see a slight decrease in the utility fund from about $1.5 million to $1.2 million. The benefit assessments approximately doubled from the previous years, and as Michelle mentioned, interest income did significantly increase due to market conditions. On the expense side of things, again, on a quick glance, you'll see that the various categories look relatively comparable year over year. The largest increase was in that second bucket as it related to professional fees, which was due to some waste hauling expenses for a certain project that the city incurred. Every other category didn't see any significant increases or anything to note.
As part of our audit, we are required to look at your internal controls over financial reporting and report anything that is deemed to be either a significant deficiency or a material weakness in your internal controls. We did not identify anything that we believe to be a material weakness. However, we did identify one item that we believe is a significant deficiency. And that is just something that is deemed to be important enough that we should be sharing it with you.
Yep. There's a lot of words. I am not certainly going to read all of this, and hopefully you guys had a chance to read it. But we're required to set both the criteria and condition and then some related other aspects of the finding. So the criteria basically indicates that your restricted net position at year-end should be accurately reported on your year-end financial statement, reflecting all collections of restricted dollars as well as all uses of those restricted dollars. Also, you should make sure that the intended uses of your restricted funds are clearly outlined and transparent in any budget document. So the condition indicates what happened during the year. So as you know, your city's water and sewer benefit assessments are restricted for future capital infrastructure. During fiscal year 2024, there was about $1.3 million that was transferred in cash from your restricted funds, which represented cost incurred for previous fiscal years. And so what that indicated to us was essentially because the cash transfer was finally decided to be made to cover those costs from previous years, that meant that unfortunately in those previous years, the restricted piece that we reported on your audit wasn't accurate. And so it appeared that the city's practice was to update your restricted fund balance when actual cash was transferred, not necessarily when the expenses were incurred. Also, this didn't seem to come to light as on your utility fund budget. It wasn't necessarily super transparent that said that project would be funded by your restricted sources, and it just said fund balance, which doesn't necessarily mean restricted versus unrestricted. The overall effect is that your restricted net position totals reported for your future capital infrastructure on the fiscal year 20 through 2023 financial statements were inaccurate as they did not reflect the costs incurred for the belt filter project during those years. As of June 30, 2024, and on this audit report, your restricted net position total of $7.2 million does properly include all incurred costs for this project through year end. As I mentioned, the overall cause, it seems the city's practice was to report those year-end restricted totals based on when cash transfers were made rather than when the project costs were incurred, even though the project was approved for funding through these restricted sources. So we recommended that the city revise its procedures to ensure the year-end restricted net position total accurately reflects all collections and cost, whether or not cash was actually moved, as well as making sure that your budget presentations are updated to provide more transparency and detailed funding allocations for projects. Management responded. They've updated your capital asset process narrative to include some revised language to make sure that in the future this doesn't happen again.
And then maybe we should just pause for a moment, see if there's any questions or if there's anything Jim or Barry would like to add just to bring clarity, or if we're good, we'll just move on. But I just feel like it's important. Jim, anything else?
No, as said, we've modified our process for future years. So while in the capital improvement program, the project detail did specify restricted funds, that wasn't clear on the actual budget documents. So going forward, we'll have a specific line for restricted funds, and we'll also make sure that both appendices to the capital improvement program will note that, not just the project detail sheet. So we'll have it on the project summary sheet as well.
And it's important to recognize that fund balance does not equate to restricted funds. So just make sure when you're designating the use or the source of funds for the project, if you're planning on using the fund balance, which means prior year reserves, but not restricted funds, because restricted funds has a connotation that tied directly back to the benefit, well, in this particular case, the benefit assessments.
Yep.
Questions, comments, concerns, council?
Okay, one more piece.
At the start, we mentioned that the city was subject to an alternative compliance examination. Again, this was not new. You were subject to it last year. We're required to issue a report on it and look at the expenditure of the ARPA funding. We looked at the activities allowed and made sure that you followed proper cost principles. We did not identify any issues of noncompliance, and we issued an opinion saying that the city complied in all material respects with the specified requirements of the ARPA for fiscal year 2024.
And that is a separate report that we issue outside of the audit report. It's not combined in that audit report. Yep. That's it.
So that's what we prepared for you.
Questions, comments, concerns from council? We will, in fact, need to approve this tonight since we do not have a regular meeting on Monday. So again, thank you for the presentation. Jim, do you want me to head right into the vote for it then?
Sure, we may as well take care of it now.
One more time, questions, comments, concerns by council? Looking for a motion in regards to the audit report.
I move to accept the audit report.
Looking for a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Carries. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have council member statement regarding conflicts of interest on agenda items. I should have waited just a moment. Any conflicts? Hearing none, proceeding forward to public comment pertaining to agenda and non-agenda items. Again, since we have a combined meeting today, this is public comment pertaining to both agenda and non-agenda items, if anybody would like to make a comment today.
Hey guys, Nick Kalinuk, 3 Canoe Court. I just wanted to say it's on October 25th, it's the 50th anniversary of Northwest Middle School on the PTO. I don't know if you guys have been contacted yet or not, but we'd like you guys all to come if you could. So if you're available from 5 to 7 p.m. on October 25th, be awesome.
Thank
That's
you.
it. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Nick.
Additional additional public comment pertaining to agenda and non-agenda items? Any other comments on the floor? Hearing none, proceeding forward to resolution, ordinances, and agreements. Adoption. Up for adoption tonight, we have ordinance 10-2024 Campaign Finance Code Amendment. And again, we'll be moving straight into voting, so I'll start off with questions, comments, concerns by council regarding it. Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion in regards to it.
Make a motion to approve the campaign finance code amendment.
Looking for a second.
I will second.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Carries. Next up, we have Resolution 2024-13, Water Allocation for October. Questions, comments, concerns by council? Hearing none, I am looking for a motion in regards to that.
Move to accept the water allocation for October.
I'm looking for a second.
I will second.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Carries. Next up, City Manager Report. Jim?
Okay, not a whole lot this month. Let's see, we just spoke about as far as charter and code updates. We just approved that one for the campaign finance. We'll talk about this a little bit more under new business, but regarding Roberts Mill Road, Broad Street, and the DeLauder issue, the city attorney requested that we have a more formal record of direction to pursue a claim, both against the bond and the bankruptcy. So that keeps his options open. So we'll get to that under old business. We have on the stormwater project for Riffles Lane, we did have another owner come in and sign the easement documents, so slowly making progress on that. The FY24 sewer rehabilitation, we did have a pre-construction meeting with Monumental Paving and Excavating on October 2nd. Let's see, the notice of intent with MDE is done. So we can do the work under our general permit. We weren't required to pull a specific permit for the project. We anticipate our grading permit to be issued any day now. And the contractor expects to begin work probably a week after we secure the two deeds of easement that we need where the new sewer line is not going to follow the old alignment. So the house, let's see, 2 houses down from the park entrance is one where the sewer line is going to be moved a little bit away from a garage that's on the property there. And then by Grace United Church, the line currently goes right behind the church building underneath the playground, and it's going to be rerouted to go around the playground. So we needed to secure new easements to shift the sewer line in those places. So once we have those, the contractor will mobilize and get to work. So they're anticipating a week after they get the word that that's done. Mr. Mayor, I'm assuming you'll probably talk about today's visit in your report?
I'll let you talk about it. I'm pretty exhausted.
Okay. So today was the Secretary of Housing and Community Development, Jake Day, has been doing these, they call them day trips around the state. He's visiting each county. So today he and staffers from DHCD and some other agencies visited Carroll County. The event was organized by Carroll County, but there were a couple Taneytown stops on there. So the group toured Taneytown Crossing, which was a housing development that was funded through low-income housing tax credits through DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development. So the group wanted to see basically the impact that their funding was making, in the local communities. So it was a nice opportunity to kind of show off that project a little bit. The group got to walk through a vacant unit that was down there. I was happy to be able to tag along with that because I'd never seen the inside of any of those units. So it was nice to see, while they looked nice in the plans, seeing it physically there, really nice dwellings for folks. It's been, I think, a successful example of infill development for us where there was no new city infrastructure that we now need to maintain because everything was already in place in Westview Drive. And now there's, well over $1 million of improved property there at no additional expense to us. So at any rate, so the tour stopped there, and they did a couple, they referred to them as windshield stops because they didn't want to get 40 people off and on the bus multiple times. So basically, Economic Development Director Mishi had some poster size images of a couple of the projects that have benefited from further DHCD funding through Community Legacy and the building improvement program that we orchestrated. So they did kind of windshield stops by Deja Vu Jewels and the Red Truck Ice Cream, just kind of pointing out and then showing some pictures of the before and after. So I think the delegation was happy to see those things. We had the opportunity to chat with the secretary about some local issues. So I think I was very pleased that they took some time to spend time here in Taneytown. They also spent some time in Westminster yesterday and a little bit more this afternoon. And then at the county office building, there was kind of I think they may have used the term stakeholders meeting with the county commissioners, and the mayors were invited. Very busy day, but a good day. So I'm very, very pleased at the reception that we had with the secretary and his staff. So just wanted to kind of give a quick update on that, and very appreciative that the county involved us in at least a little piece of it. So that was very, very nice to see. Last quick thing I wanted to mention, I think we take this for granted here a lot, but back in 2004, the President and Congress declared October to be Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And I just wanted to take a minute to express, appreciation and kind of for the unsung IT department here in keeping our infrastructure safe. Dan and Eric do a phenomenal job of keeping our systems up and running.
I have one tidbit on that. I will never ask you for a gift card, just so everybody's aware.
Okay, right. So, just by way of example, this summer there was the CrowdStrike event that took down a lot of businesses and a lot of other government offices, and we were still running. And I think that's kind of testament to the measures that Dan and Eric have in place for us. So just wanted to kind of make mention of that. So I realize it's always, it's whatever recognition this month or that month. There's always something to be recognized. But I thought, again, we don't really talk about information technology a whole lot, but we can't work without it.
Yeah.
And,
I want to say that,
our team does a
Dan, I was
phenomenal
over in Dan's office the other week, and he showed me where we get nearly 13,000 hits per day of people trying to break into our system. So he does a fantastic job of staying on top of that and keeping our systems secure, and very appreciative of that.
And we did just, Dan did just finish up a grant recently to apply for some increased security measures. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get that.
Yeah,
That'll
talk
give
about
us
that.
some more operating flexibility, but still keeping us safe. So just wanted to take a minute and kind of recognize our IT department. And that's all that I've got, unless there are questions for me.
Questions, comments, concerns by council?
I have just one and it kind of goes back to the audit a little bit. I was just surprised that our water and sewer fees are down this year from last year. And are we using less water, or any idea what's behind that?
The consumption is just down a bit. So
I mean, is it a population thing? I mean, it's not like we had to stop adding houses and stuff.
no, well, our growth has essentially stagnated
Right, at
with
the end of- at the
Meadowbrook
end of
and Meads Crossing having
Crossing.
been built out a couple of years ago. So I think the usage is just slightly down. So, and we didn't have I'll say our near drought situation that we typically face every summer.
Pretty out in July.
was a much
Shorter
shorter
duration, yeah.
window
Yeah.
this year than is typical. So I think that perhaps outdoor water consumption was down a good bit because, you know, we didn't have the duration of the dry spell in the summer that we typically do.
Okay.
So I can double check with DPW, but
Yeah, I was
that's
just interested, because it
that's
just
my
seemed,
take on
it just seemed a little off kilter to
Counterintuitive
see that
that-
number
that-
go down. I mean, no, we haven't reduced rates or anything, but neither have we increased them. So anybody who says there were, you know, anyway. Yeah, we didn't collect as much money this year as we did last year.
Right.
Sounds good. Any additional comments, questions, concerns from council? Hearing none, proceeding to department reports. Main Street update.
Okay. Mish is going to drive with our PowerPoint presentation here. The mayor asked that we just give you kind of an interim report or a bit of an update on what's been going on as far as our behind-the-scenes Main Street efforts. Next month, the plan is to come back with a list of recommendations on how to restructure our program going forward. But just to kind of get started with it, you can go ahead to the next slide, Mish. And I need to keep up on my own. Surface here. So we began this process brainstorming what kind of information would be useful to give you recommendations next month on the new format of Main Street. There's 30 Main Streets across the state, and we wanted to basically ask them some questions based on our experiences. And we looked at 9 Main Street programs that we wanted to look further at, either because they were kind of recognized as being successful programs or because we felt that they had some characteristics in common with us. We started with online research for what, you know, and I'll credit Mish with doing the vast majority of that, to learn what we could about the basic form of their programs. And that information kind of let us drill down on some more specific questions for them and kind of helps us narrow down the programs that helped us narrow down the programs that we wanted to focus on. Go on to the next one. So from the initial 9, we whittled it down to 6 for a little bit of a deeper dive. And for that, it's going to be a mixture of Zoom calls or Teams meetings and site visits, depending on logistics and how many we can actually physically get to over the next few weeks. They're a mix of places, including programs that have very little government involvement, and there's one where the elected officials are actually the Main Street Board. And we've seen programs that are considered very successful that operate under each model. As most of you know, the Main Street program grew out of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and we'd like to, you know, having spoken with some of the other Main Streets, we'd like to focus on the historic preservation aspect of the Main Street program a little bit more this time around. We're also interested to hear from the other communities what kind of support their Main Streets have in terms of the residents who volunteer, perhaps donations, as well as the posture of the businesses that aren't in the Main Street. That is, you know, how do they look towards the Main Street businesses and the municipality support or, you know, designation of that Main Street community and focus on it. So lastly, we really wanted to learn about the board dynamics, what that was like in these other Main Street communities, since obviously we've had some challenges here. We'll jump on to the next slide. So engaging our businesses. So we don't have a, you know, Main Street's not a business association like a Chamber of Commerce or a, you know, a downtown business association might be. So trying to run it like one does not appear like it's going to be successful, and that's kind of some of the feedback we've gotten so far. So acknowledging that, and with the economic development being a key aspect of the Main Street program, we reached out to businesses with just a short survey distributed through SurveyMonkey. Went out to 25 businesses. 22 were opened, 3 were unopened, 14 clicked through the survey, and 10 completed it. So the purpose was really to collect data to kind of inform the next round of questions that we might have for the businesses who did respond. So the first 3 questions are on this slide. see, and the purpose behind them is in green there, so I'm going to have to enlarge my screen a little bit here.
I think that we
So
can
you
provide this to you.
Yeah, we can,
You know, so you can dig into
yeah,
it yourself as
we'll
well.
provide a copy of it afterwards.
You don't have to read it all on the screen this very moment.
Thank you, that will save time. Okay, next one. So this is just continuation of the remainder of the survey. Go on. So what we'd like to do next, so the survey is kind of a starting point. So after this, we've got some more questions that the survey was kind of designed to help us understand where we are, where businesses want us to go. We're going to use the survey as our starting point and kind of delve a little deeper with the businesses that did respond. So we're planning to complete interviews or conversations with those businesses by October 22nd. We've also been engaged with DHCD on the process. So as you know, Main Street, Maryland is housed in the Department of Housing and Community Development. Christine McPherson is the project manager for Main Street and has been for several years, but now she's basically overseeing the whole program. And let's see, the new person in her old role is Kristen Dawson. So Christine continues to be involved in all of our calls, supporting Kristen. And Christine's supervisor has been involved in the discussions as well. We had our kickoff call in September, and we have some follow-up calls scheduled. We've got, I think, 2 more calls scheduled, is it, Mish? Okay. And the idea, DHC can provide us some guidance and advice and tell us, help us ensure that we're, adhering to the state level rules, but also, they respect that the process has to be a local one and that there's not a one size fits all. So they're really kind of stepping back to be a resource for us rather than, telling us how to do things, but they have made themselves available for consultations. So that's very helpful. And let's see, engaging DHCD. So one of the things Christine was very specific about during our kickoff call was that DHCD awards the Main Street designation to the local government, and that the local government is ultimately in control of the Main Street programs that operate in its downtown. So whether the organization is housed in the city government or is a separate 501c3 with very little city government involvement, the local government is always the organization that decides the format of their Main Street program. And the local government can always change that if the format is not working. So she made a point to be very clear that it is always an agreement between DHCD and the municipality. They also made a point to emphasize that they're recommending that we have at least 80% of our framework in place from the city's perspective before we have a Main Street board trying to function. So they're advising that having the Main Street group come up with their own rules is really not the best practice. So they said we need to have at least the majority of it fleshed out and figured out how we want to see it work, and then let the board or let the Main Street group figure out kind of the remainder portion. We're trying to be mindful of the agreement between DHCD and the city as we move forward with our recommendations. The responsibilities of the local government, and I know I've circulated the DHCD Main Street agreement with the council several months ago, and you'll see it again when we make our recommendations next month. But they are relatively straightforward. The responsibilities of Main Street. So the Main Street community.
The letter of agreement, if I may, specifies responsibilities of the local government, and then it also says responsibilities of the Main Street community. So from DHCD's perspective, the responsibilities of the government with whom they're engaging in the agreement are X, Y, Z. But then the DHCD frames it as responsibilities of the Main Street community, and that's where it lists you do marketing, you have a board, you have secure funding, and so on and so forth. And so here at the bottom, maybe 10 points, whatever, are taken from the letter of agreement, and that's what DHCD is calling responsibilities of the Main Street community. And they stressed, if you don't mind me finishing, they stressed that however you all decide that the program should look on our behalf, whatever organization is in place, in government, out of government, whatever, that is going to have to fulfill these responsibilities of the Main Street community. So, maintaining the accreditation standards, have an organizational system and structures, sustainable program funding, and so on and so forth. And so that kind of should be a little bit of a North Star that whatever we decide on will be in a position to fulfill these.
Okay. So that's basically kind of a quick update on what we've been working on so far. If anyone has questions or comments at this point, happy to hear them. But as I said, we intend to be back next month with a set of recommendations on moving forward. But the mayor, as I said, wanted us to kind of make a little more public show of what we've been working on kind of behind the scenes. So that folks out there in TV land will know something's happening.
Questions, comments, concerns by council?
As one might imagine, I have a few questions, and so the first, and I don't know if you want to back up on your slideshow, Jay. We can kind of start at the top.
The left cursor does work, so yes.
Thank you. The one-on-one interviews, I do like the selection of towns that you've picked. I know people in most of those in most of those organizations and towns, and so I think that's a really good cross section of Main Street communities that are doing good work. My question to you gentlemen is, can we get stakeholders involved in this process? My biggest concern going forward is that if you create this process in a vacuum and don't involve the people, and I know that there's still a lot of sore feelings out there, but if you continue just to ignore that and move forward absent contacting them or trying to involve them in the process, you're going to come up against resistance regardless of how good the process that you come up with is.
Sure.
Can we start by trying to maybe try to re-involve some of those folks? Make some kind of conciliatory efforts in that regard?
Well, the survey was
I was
intended
going to say, isn't that what the survey was
to be-
for?
Engaging our businesses is section 2, yeah.
And to me, it's disappointing that
There was
That's
so
so
little response to that. That's very disappointing.
How many businesses are there, or how many people did you send the survey to?
25.
25, and we got 10 responses?
Mm-hmm. So, like the manager said, we set it to 25. 22 were opened. Only 3 were unopened. 14 clicked through it, but only 10 ultimately completed it.
Sorry, not to interrupt, but my ask to y'all would be to go back to those ones who didn't respond and figure out why they don't want to engage in, if that makes sense. Because again, going off of a survey with under half of the businesses of it, I don't think we're going to see a full picture of how to get these businesses engaged. Because we don't need just 10 businesses engaged. We need 22 businesses to be engaged for the program to be successful. So I'm not trying to make more work for y'all, but I do think we should, try to hit up the ones that didn't respond, see why they don't want to engage, and see if there isn't any way we can kind of formulate that back into the process to get them engaged. Sorry, again,
And
I'm not trying to add more work to you.
I think the survey was a good start. I'm not saying that was a bad idea or anything. I just don't know that went far enough can we have the results of the survey? Can we see what what came back out of that? You took a survey and questions, and you talk about what the questions are, but I don't see anything that tells me what the answers were that came back.
That'll be, right, that'll follow up next month.
All right.
So.
One of the, and this is something that speaks to a wider issue here in town. is volunteerism, and the fact that we have difficulty getting people to serve on boards and commissions, it seems. And, part of that was kind of on display with the acrimony that came through on the Main Street board. I think that, and this is just kind of a general comment that applies to just about everything that we do, is that we just don't seem to be good at getting out to the residents, to the citizens, and getting them involved. And in a lot of cases, we get a lot of, well, why should I? Because it doesn't seem to matter. And so the openness of this process, the engagement and involvement of some of the other stakeholders, I think would go a ways to alleviating a little of that.
Can I just mention, to me, that just creates a different kind of vacuum, because then you're only catering to the people who have the time and want something from the program. Like, the program is supposed to be a long-term, cover a long amount of time and place, and if you just keep focusing on these few people that want to, and I get it, they want to be involved, and that's great, but they have a certain way they want it to go. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a big, wide-range coverage, especially talking about historic preservation and other aspects, not let's just keep pushing the businesses, because that's not what the Main Street is supposed to be about. Like they said in the beginning, it's not a chamber of commerce. It's something that is talking about our Main Street, how we can get more people here, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's about the businesses. Sometimes it does mean it's about the events or other things that will draw them here. And I think that was part of the problem, is that we had some tunnel vision going on with the previous group. And I'm not saying that what they said was wrong, but it was very hard for them to kind of open up that curtain a little bit and take more in. So if we get a basis, and then once that's set, then they can come in. Aside from the surveys, like the surveys help, but again, like you said, there's people that aren't filling them out.
Right.
And I don't,
And
sometimes they don't,
and some of that reason that they're not filling them out may be this exact
and
same.
some of them may just be like, I'm running my business the way I want to run my business.
Well,
the city government shouldn't have anything to do with it. And maybe they don't
you're
need
right,
us
there is a
to
fair
do
amount of that, and right now, that's kind of where everybody kind of is like, do we really need this? So.
To Councilmember Fuller's point, that's why I do think we should go back to the ones who didn't engage and figure out why they don't want to engage.
Maybe, yeah,
'Cause
maybe
again,
go back and
that might
ask.
even answer is that, they might just feel that they want to do their own business, and I respect that fully as a business, but we should try to figure out why they don't want to engage. And if there is a way that we can shape this program to where they do want to engage, and if they don't, then that is also respectable. Again, a lot of business owners do not have time to engage at the level of a Main Street committee.
Yeah. And I'm also not saying that you need to go back to Sharon and Stephanie. But let's see if we can get some involvement from other people on in the area, and that are in the affected area, and in Main Street, the program, yes, it's about preserving historic districts, but the means to preserving those historic districts are the businesses that occupy the spaces.
Well, but
So
unfortunately, we don't have enough businesses occupying all those spaces.
Yes, and that's
So-
part of the problem. And that's supposed to be part of what Main Street is in place to fix. And it's not, that isn't
They incentivize, they don't fix. Like, you
Well-
can't make a property owner, decide to not have rental properties on a ground floor level if that's what makes the money. So to have a group come in and say, hey, we
No,
want
but
you
you
to
can,
do
there
this.
are certainly programs out there that can help incentivize those business owners, and that's what you really want to do. You don't want to be, we want you to do this.
But
That's not the
for
way.
That's for after we've got the basis.
I agree.
That's for after. That's for later on. That's not
But
for now.
you need to make sure that the structure is set up to be inclusive of all those things. And I think that by excluding stakeholders, from this process, I just don't, I think it's going to make things a little more difficult than
I
necessary.
don't think we're excluding stakeholders, though. Again, that is the main purpose of the survey. And again, that's why I do think we should go back out and see why they don't want to engage. But at the end of the day, to go reach back out again to specific people, again, I think you're creating the tunnel vision that Councilmember Fuller did bring up, is that we need to see why they don't want to engage. And again, if it's just simply that they don't have the time, then they don't have the time. But we definitely don't want to restructure a committee around 10 people or even narrow that down to try to get specific people who were maybe previously engaged to, again, try to structure it how they want. We need to put the structure in, as they said, 80%, and then they roll with it from there. But again, we do need to see why only 10 out of 22 are engaging. Mish.
Mr. Mayor, we are 60 days in, roughly, to this process, and neither the manager nor I know what our recommendation will be, nor what form it will be in, and I'm mindful of overpromising. But one of the things we have discussed is taking the recommendations and sort of categorizing it in the same way that DHCD categorizes the letter of agreement, saying, DHCD says, have sustainable funding. This is our recommendation for how it's funded. DHCD says you have to have an organizational structure. This is our recommendation for that. And so Section 1, researching other Main Street Maryland programs, and Section 2, engaging our businesses, I think is designed to provide, if everybody answers this business survey and says that they're willing themselves to go out and water the plants, then in our design component of that, we're going to recommend, based on what we've heard from other towns and based on what our businesses have told us, we recommend doing X, Y, Z. And so this is fact finding more than venting or saying, how are your feelings? What did we do wrong before? This is us gathering our information and saying, okay, we need a recommendation on how many people should be on the board. This is why we're recommending this based on, our own, hypothetically, only 3 of our businesses said they're willing to serve on a committee. So our recommendation is going to be that the board not be so business heavy, something like that. And so tonight really is just to sort of update you on how the fact-finding is going, and sort of where our mind is on the fact-finding. And then next month, we're going to present to you our recommendations based on what the requirements of the program are from DHCD and the facts we've gathered. And also, next month when we present this to you, that doesn't mean that you have to immediately adopt it. It doesn't mean that you have to, accept it in whole or in part. It can be an ongoing conversation. After we've got these recommendations, we can take those to stakeholders and say, what do you think about this, and so on and so forth. So this is really, it's an ongoing and an evolutionary project, and this is sort of where we're gathering our facts from.
And I like the last thing you said about creating your set of recommendations and then going back to those people. That's
course,
great.
will be the
I love that.
council's
The only thing
decision.
that I would ask is that you get, as they could or as somebody can, someone from the stakeholders groups, from the even if it's the group of 10 that answered the survey, whatever, that could maybe ride along or listen in on your interviews with the other, so that they can hear what's going on in the other programs and hear for themselves. Because there's a certain amount of, shall we say, distrust over what coming from the city because of everythth that went on. So I think just even if they're only there as listeners,
With only 10 of 22 responding, I would say that, again, you don't want to just make something based on a vocal minority currently.
Well, I'm not suggesting that.
I know, it's just, even if you take those people who, only the 10 who have answered, and you take them on ride-alongs, and again, they become more part of the stakeholder figuring it out process, again, you are now putting yourself in the same tunnel that was described earlier.
And I'd rather you take the 13 who didn't answer and find out if you can get them involved, you know? I'm not saying you have to keep it narrow to those that spoke up. You know, but it ought to be broader than just the two of you guys, my opinion. So, we can leave it go at that.
Additional questions, comments, concerns by council?
I'm just curious, does HCDC say that only stakeholders, or can someone just from the community at large be on this as well?
They, to the best of my knowledge off the top of my head, they don't put limits on who is on the board, so that
Okay.
it does not need to be a business owner or a property owner or a resident. It can be someone from the larger community.
And they
Because
actually,
that would be my suggestion as well.
And
they did say we should look for community members. That way it isn't just,
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
isn't just businesses. We need to know how
I
we
would
get the
like to see
community
that.
engaged.
And I think some of the better ones have, there's council representation on some of those boards. Like I say, there's one board that I know, you know, that we're familiar with, that the city council is the Main Street Board. I'm not sure that that's a functioning model except in that place, and that's just because of those people. You know what I mean?
I have no interest in being on the Main Street.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, so with that, I'm good.
And Diane, to your point, in various iterations of our Main Street program over the years, we've had, some fluctuation of when we've had business, downtown business owners or Main Street business owners involved. And we've had periods where we've had very little involvement of folks who actually, were employed or owned businesses downtown. When you were on the board for, a few years there, I think, our chairperson worked at ACNB, which,
They're out of them.
but I think she may have been the only downtown business person on the board. The rest were just volunteers who had the time and interest. And
Exactly.
so with what we tried to put in place with the previous administration, I guess was we were hoping for more engagement from the stakeholders.
Yeah, but, getting
and-
that level
and-
of volunteerism
Right.
now is just like pulling teeth.
And
It was easier then.
yeah, and some committees from the most recent iteration of the board had more success than others in recruiting volunteers for their committees. So I think we need to cast a wider net, as far as seeking volunteers, and not, I think there were some positives in theory, at least, as to what we were trying to do by bringing in stakeholders and engaging them. But I think that we also saw success with engaging the community, the larger community, and
Yes.
not trying to focus like our more recently codified or codified Main Street chapter. So I think we do need to have it more open-ended, and DHCD is certainly receptive to that. They do not require that that the board be comprised of any particular set of, business owners or property owners or what have you. And from the research we've done so far and the interviews we have completed, there are Main Streets that seem to be very successful, that may have kind of an ex officio position, or they might involve like a staff person, but the board is comprised of largely of just community volunteers. One that I spoke to has basically a membership development committee that goes out and kind of recruits people and works with them over time to kind of groom them to be board members. Which is a very,
Very forward thinking.
you know, and to have that robust of a program is I'll say a little enviable right now. But it makes perfect sense, and it's something that, you know, for many of our boards, there have been times that I've thought, well, you know, we sometimes are challenged with finding people who are willing to, you know, participate on a board. And we sometimes put people on boards without them really knowing what they're getting into or what their role and responsibility really is. But, you know, we've never done much in the way of trying to, you know, develop somebody into that role before we appoint them. And again, with the level of participation that we see generally, that is a challenge for us. But so there are a lot of different models out there that we've seen, and we really just want to pick and, you know, have the conversations, find out, you know, what's really working in different communities, you know, what they have that's similar to us, what sets them apart. You know, our Main Street and our community is different than a lot of main streets. Some main streets they lean into existing tourism sources. Thurmont, for example, leans into the fact that they're 5 minutes away from a national park and a state park, and, you know, other very local, you know, outdoor type activities.
Can I
You
just
know,
say go ahead, I'm sorry.
Is Thurmont the one that you refer to, I don't know if it was you or me, referred to as an affiliate Main Street? Is that Thurmont? They refer to somebody as an affiliate Main Street. What is that?
Um,
That means they're
They are in the
working
process of
toward-
becoming an accredited Main Street.
Okay. Emmitsburg, that's right.
Yes.
Okay.
So I just, one little thing, just to follow up on something you just said. You, places lean into what their tourism or their draw is. And I just kind of want to just plant this seed because some interesting, you know, for just even from the last couple of weekends and a couple of weekends coming up, we have here 3 large, beautiful, high-end wedding destinations. We have some 60 rooms of overnight lodging capability here in town, and probably another 15 or 20 within a few miles. You know, this past weekend, there were 7 large weddings that occurred over just the past weekend between the 3 destinations here and Bolingbrook Mansion. That's probably close to 1,000 people who came to this area just last weekend. Every year, 1,000 people or more stay at my inn. Another 8,000 to 10,000 stay down the street. Another probably 1,000 or 2,000 over the various Airbnbs and other accommodations that are around. It's a huge market, and it's a market that's there that we simply do nothing to tap into. So one of the things that we should be thinking about going forward, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit because we're still a far distance from this, but something that we should be thinking about and leaning into is that marketplace. And how do we get those venues involved in what we're doing? Because they really should be part of this. I know that they retreated back onto their campus some years ago down the street because of differences that they had with the city over time. We need to reach back out, get them involved. We've got these other 2 venues that are here within city limits. We need to reach out and get them involved because that's where your source is. That's where your draw is. We don't have the beautiful river running through the middle of town. We don't have the topography and some of the really interesting features that other towns may have. So we have to lean into what we do have, and that's what we do have.
So just before we wrap this up, I do want to make clear that, as Mish said, we're at this point we're thinking of presenting recommendations, kind of following the format of the agreement with DHCD for the Main Street program. So I don't want you to expect that we're going to deliver a turnkey package to you that you can adopt. This is just going to be, here's what we've learned, and, from those conversations and the feedback that we have had from the businesses. And we will do some follow-up with the business community to see, if some folks are willing to engage that didn't respond the first time around. And certainly we'll do those deeper dive conversations with those who did. But, we're basically going to come back with, recommendations on specific areas of the agreement, for further discussion. And we'll whittle that down into, what our program should look like. But it's not going to be, November, we're not giving you something that you
expecting
can
a finished
adopt.
plan in
So
November.
I just want to be very, very clear about that. So we're going to present you a set of recommendations, and we will, ask for your feedback on those, over the coming months. I don't expect you to get something in your packet and be ready to say, I want option, it's not going to be like an a la carte menu that you're going to come back to us and say, we want this, 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 and this, and this. It's going to take some time and some thought. And you may want to engage with people on your own and see what kind of feedback you get on some of it. So, I think we are looking at more of a process, for the next couple months. So we'll.
And I think I think you're making all the right moves, doing the right start. I think one of the things, and I keep saying I'm going to leave it, but I'm going to leave it with this. One of the things that Ms. Mary said in the mother of the Main Street program, the person who actually created this 30-odd years ago, said that, trying to do this without a plan is like trying to put the jigsaw puzzle together without having the box lid. And so we need to get us a box lid.
And I think we didn't do that as well as we should have the last time.
Yes.
Question is a little unrelated, but you said there are 22 out of 25. Are the 3 businesses that aren't open, are those just ones that, do they already have permits through the city and they're just not open yet? Or is it 3 vacancies?
I apologize. 3 emails went unopened.
Oh, my bad.
I apologize.
I thought you meant
I'm
3
sorry if
businesses that weren't.
No,
open.
that was a list of what people did once the emails were sent.
Okay.
Do you know if those were live addresses and if those were live people or?
None of them came back, like no emails bounced back, to the best of my knowledge, that they were people. For instance, there is an auto repair shop on Main Street. I don't know how frequently they check their email. My understanding is they're primarily a telephone scheduled business, and so it may be that they don't really prioritize email. One of the hair salons, I think, probably doesn't check their email very often, things like that. So I think that it's.
Have you thought about following up on phone conversations or stopping in to see them and say, hey, we sent you this email. Did you see this? Would you like to be involved in this?
Yes, I aspire to a much greater reply rate. There are a lot of moving parts here with dealing with engaging with DHCD and other Main Street partners and so on and so forth. So it's not, it is not a lack of will or enthusiasm. And hopefully by the time that we meet you early next month, we'll have, a 100% engagement rate. Oh, it's also, by the way,
Over-promising.
oh, right, yeah. I just get enthusiastic. Also, in situations like no anchovies and Old Red Truck ice cream, they only got 1 survey. Situations like Downtown Fitness and Design Associates, they got 1 survey. So if you are saying, I think we have more businesses than that,
No,
that could be one of the
that
things
wasn't
that's
the
skewing
question.
it. No, I'm just include that as information.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Additional questions, comments, concerns by council?
Well, thank you for all the information thus far.
You're welcome, and I have emailed it to you. You might all be getting simultaneous
Yes.
dings right now.
Thank you, Mish.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the city manager said that I may be excused after this, and if you want anything else from me, the clock is
Good night.
ticking.
See you in the morning.
Any questions on the economic development report while Misha's here?
Good night, thank you all.
Any questions, comments, concerns regarding the other department reports? Hearing none, I am proceeding forward to legal report. Jim, did you have something for us?
Nothing this evening. Obviously, Jay was not able to join us as hoped. So, jump into old business.
Yep, we'll head on down there.
So for the WF DeLauder and Son claim, we are really just looking for a motion and vote for the city attorney to pursue a claim against the DeLauder, against the bonds for the projects and for the bankruptcy case.
Second.
A question
It's
on
been
that, just
moved and
before we,
seconded.
do we have an estimate on repairs to take to the bonding company, or are we?
I do not have them in front of me, but CDM Smith has prepared memorandums regarding the deficits on both projects.
Okay, but
So
with
I believe-
dollars, so we have something
Yes,
to, okay.
yes. So I want to say on the paving aspect for the Roberts Mill Road, paving defects, I think that we're looking at roughly $60,000. I don't recall the number for the Fairground Avenue settling or sinking problem. But CDM Smith has prepared memos, all those for Jay to incorporate into the claim.
Looking for a motion. I think we had one. Yep.
Judy and,
Second.
yeah.
And then any further comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Carries. We got new business, monthly financial report. Questions, comments, concerns by council? Looking for a motion in regards to that.
Motion to approve the monthly financial report.
Looking for a second. Any further questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Carries. Next up, we have accounts payables. I am looking, or questions, comments, concerns regarding that? Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion. Oh.
I have just a point of information, I guess, or need clarification on an item on page 10 of the accounts payable for NZ Kramer, which is a lumber yard. And we have a $354 expense for a train set, and then a train set rehab for $60. What is that about?
That's Parks and Rec.
Train set?
It's like a play set that we were able to obtain secondhand.
Oh.
And we had to get it over here, and then the guys did some rehab on it, and it should be up at the park here soon.
Oh, well, so it really is a train set.
It really is a train set, and it's very nice, yes.
Well,
Yes.
That's wonderful, just
Yes,
clarify.
it's very exciting.
Some new hardware and stuff, I guess, that.
Yeah, they just had to update it and clean it up and
Can't wait
make
to
it look
see it.
pretty. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
So it'll be up before the holidays?
That's the plan,
Okay.
yes.
With lights on it?
Any additional comments, questions, concerns regarding accounts payables? Looking for a motion in regards to that?
Move to approve the accounts payable.
Looking for a second?
A second.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Carries. Next up, we have Memorial Park Expansion Engineering Services Amendment. Jim, did you have any additional comments on that?
Okay, this is basically the result of State Highway switching reviewers during our Memorial Park expansion project. Our agreement with Arrow covered a certain number of back and forth steps to address comments. And with State Highway having already gone through 2 rounds of comments, that was the limit of our agreement with Arrow. So in order to basically address the plethora of comments that the new reviewers at State Highway have hit the project with, this is kind of our worst-case scenario expense that we would be looking at for the redesign and response to address those comments. So we did have some conversations about the idea of perhaps abandoning the access drive to Frederick Street. And between the Parks Director, Planning Director, and myself, the concurrence was the the park will just function better having that additional point of ingress and egress. And we realize it's going to cost extra money, but the project is just better with it than without it. So we recommend approving this addition for the additional engineering costs.
Questions, comments, concerns by council? Looking for a motion in regards to it?
Make a motion to approve the engineering service amendment for the parks.
Looking for a second?
Second. Other way. Second.
Any additional comments, questions, concerns by council? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Carries. Next up, we got council member reports, starting with Councilmember Tillman.
A couple of things. I'll save some of this for, regarding the Planning Commission, work is moving forward on the revision to the comprehensive plan. We've put out survey. We've gotten a tremendous number of responses in the early going to the survey. We're very pleased with the response that we got, both online and also live responses from the table that we had out at Memorial Park for the Harvest Festival, even in the weather as such as it was. We'll have the table out again at the pit beef sale for the fire department. I'll be manning the table for that, and we're going to be really trying to push forward. We'll probably make maybe some more Facebook posts, and we can push to try to get folks to answer that survey. But that work is moving ahead, and I have been very pleased and impressed with the efficiency with which that group has been working and accomplishing their mission. So that's gone on very well. Let's see, we did get a concept site plan from an expansion for Curaleaf. They're expanding and going to outdoor growing. And so they presented a concept plan for that, which we approved. We did not approve. That's right. We sent them back for. It was a presentation only. That's right. It comes back for approval. Thank you for correcting me. But that was very interesting. It's interesting to know that they are doing just that in other localities with a pretty fair amount of success. So it'd be an expansion. I think they said about 30 more jobs would come with that. So that's going to be very interesting. Active site plans, the Taneytown Elementary School kindergarten addition is working through the process. As you just talked about, Memorial Park expansion and Curaleaf, and those were really the active projects that we talked about. So it's a busy time in planning in the Planning Commission. So
Councilmember
you're up.
Cheney.
Okay. For the police department, all active officers received training this past month in September. They all completed 3 hours of Will to Win training. That was a 3-part training that was completed by all patrol officers. In specialized training, Private First Class Darby completed Glock Armorer's course on September the 5th for a total of 8 hours of training. And Administrative Assistant Haley Engels has been very busy completing the Maryland Kids in Safety Seats swivel and stroll training, and that was completed on September the 9th for a total of 3 hours of training. And I know she's been very busy inspecting car seats at the police department and had an event today where she was doing that also. For the month of September, there were 407 total dispatch calls for service, 45 citations issued, and 193 total warnings issued. There were 10 adult arrests in September and 1 juvenile arrest. As far as community outreach goes, during the month of September, the police department was busy, as always, with numerous community outreach events. On September 11th, members of the department participated in a 9/11 memorial ceremony at Northwest Middle School. On September 12th, members attended Playtime in the Park, which was held in partnership with the Taneytown Library. And on September 24th, the department participated in the Community Resource Fair at the Taneytown Elementary School. Special note, Chief Baker and Major Mitchell attended the Maryland Chiefs and Sheriffs Association Conference that was held from September 8th through September 11th. And they gained a lot of informative information along with many networking opportunities with numerous other law enforcement agencies. So all good news.
Mayor Pro Tem McCarron.
We spent a lot of time already this evening talking about economic development, Main Street in particular, and I just want to, I was kind of quiet during the discussion, so I thought I'd save my comments for this spot so I'd have something to say. But we were privileged to attend. Councilman Tillman, Councilman Foster, and myself, along with Economic Director Mish, accompanied, I went over to Frederick, to the Weinberg Center, and then spent the day at a Main Street, Maryland meeting, the first annual, I guess, Main Street, Maryland meeting, and I thought it was very, very interesting. I'm not sure that it was exactly what I expected, but I did get a lot of information out of it, and I truly hope that we all together can bring some of those ideas home to Taneytown. One of the things that I did want to say about this report that's being developed, I think it's an excellent report, very detailed and very informative. The only thing I'd like to say is make sure we get the maximum benefit from what we have here. This tool could give us an edge on every other Main Street. I mean, I don't know that anybody in the Main Street community has had a in-depth study like we're undergoing right now. I think if we learn and pay attention to what comes from this study, we'll be far ahead of the game from where we were before. So I commend the staff for coming up with a plan like this. I think it's has the potential for being very important to our Main Street efforts. The idea of, and this is reflecting on what Judy said a little while ago, is that, Main Street's more than just the businesses. And that was brought out in the conference yesterday. And I don't know that I ever realized that until yesterday. I mean, I guess I always knew it, but really focused on the fact that that Main Street, Maryland, is not just about the businesses. It's about the residents. It's about the
Community.
the landowners. And it's about the landlords, and it's about the people who reside here and work here and live here. And all of this has to be considered. And the report that we're developing, it goes to great lengths in exploring each one of those facets. So again, I offer my compliments on the efforts that we're undertaking to get the report done. So that's all I have.
Councilmember Foster.
A couple of things from DPW. The well levels remain stable from the previous months. The standpipe cleaning and painting has been completed, and the tank has been filled and put back online, and MDE has issued their construction completion certificate. The city received numerous responses to the survey from Aero Engineering and is compiling the information into a database to be ready to submit to MDE by the deadline this fall. And I'd just like to echo what Councilman McCarron said about the conference yesterday. I thought it was very interesting. There were a lot of different aspects of it. The governor's office went over the housing legislation, which again is very important to Main Street and economic development. And people were generally interested. They had a lot of questions, but they had the experts there that could answer them. So I thought it was a very good conference. And that's all I have.
Councilmember Fuller.
So with tonight's approval of the engineering services amendment, Arrow will be proceeding with addressing State Highways comments on the Memorial Park expansion project, and will continue moving forward with plan approval, RFP release, and contract award so that we can get construction started. Field demand is at an all-time high and will continue to increase as our local athletic programs grow. So this project is really vital to meet this need. The National Park Service approved an October 1st start date in relation to our LWCF grant of just over $864,000 from them. So we have the green light as soon as we're ready on our end. Our 13th annual Harvest Fest was held on Saturday, September 28th at Memorial Park. Started out a little soggy, but we did still have a good turnout, and the weather actually turned around. Our first ever Birds and Bourbon at Bollinger event was held on the Sunday, September 29th, at the park. We had 10 attendees who purchased the tickets. Kimberly Smith Fuentes of the Maryland's Whiskey Bourbon Society and Taneytown Liquors provided educational bourbon tastings, and David Smith of the Carroll County Bird Club and Audubon Society led the bird watching walk. All attendees enjoyed themselves and gave very positive feedback. Next year, we'll schedule the event on a Saturday and increase the attendance or attendee threshold to accommodate more participation. We started small to kind of feel it out. I did go, and even though it was a little rainy, we had a really great time, and it didn't hurt that both David Smith and Kimberly were very knowledgeable and excited about each of their specialties, so they made the event that much better. So if you have a chance next year, you don't want to miss it. The annual photography contest is still underway with picture submissions accepted until November 1st. So if you have any pictures taken in our parks, email them to Lorena. We're accepting registrations for our first ever Halloween decorating contest, which is running now through October 31st. If you decorate your house for Halloween, you can contact us to register for a chance to win a $50, $75, or $100 gift card to the local business of your choice. Tales of Taneytown Pet Parade and Pet Contest will be held on Saturday, October 26th at Memorial Park from 3 to 5. And this is in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce's Trunk or Treat, which is at the same time, same place. Pets are still wanted for the parade and the contest. So if you're interested in signing up your pet, I would contact Lorena. All pets are welcome as long as they're controllable. We've had, we have the dogs, but we'd like to see some more. I think horses, goats, rabbits, whatever you got that you can put a costume on, I'd say bring it up. In addition to the parade, contest, and trunk or treats, there will be glitter tattoos, a petting zoo, pumpkin painting, and a Jack Russell skill demonstration. The Chamber's also working on having someone provide free hot dogs to the attendees, so come on out and enjoy the festivities. Our next meeting is going to be held next Wednesday, the 16th at 6:30 p.m. And that should be it.
Sounds good. I've had a couple of different things I've attended in the past month. I'm going to try to remember some key ones as it's been a long day. At the beginning of the month, I was invited to attend a tour of Silver Oak Academy. Went out there, toured it. The information that they gave me was very different than what the county was telling me as far as the academy goes. It's going to be more of a foster youth program. Instead of when I was first described to it, it's going to be more of like a troubled youth kind of facility. But my understanding is it's going to be more youth from the foster center and stuff like that. I know that's been a little bit of a concern of people in the area. That tour was really well. Again, staff did a tremendous job. They showed me all the different rooms, all the different facilities on the campus, and overall pretty impressive. After that, today we had Secretary Day out for his day trips, and that was good. I'll tell you, Taneytown Crossing was a pretty big highlight. We had people in Westminster talking about it. They were talking about it as being an example of what they really want to look for in some of the developments they're doing over there. We also had Secretary Day had some extra time in Taneytown. He stayed at the Antrim on Tuesday, and the mayors were invited out for dinner with him. And then, what else? There's something I am missing. Taneytown Steering Committee. So Taneytown Elementary has been designated a community school. in Maryland, and as such, they got to have a steering committee. I was invited as the mayor to take part in the steering committee. However, I told the staff on the steering committee that I might not be able to attend all of them, so I've coordinated with a staff member who will be attending them in my place when I cannot attend them. Other than that, it's been a busy month. Hope everybody has a good weekend. Looking for a motion on adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, one other thing, I don't know if we all got it. The Veterans Day ceremony is November 11th at the American Legion. I think it starts at 11.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Councilmember Tillman, I'm not sure if you got that. Your email on that list it had a period in it, and I don't think your normal email does it?
No, not,
I'll forward it over to you if you don't.
okay.
If you want.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I didn't get the email, so
Yeah.
so there must
I
be.
noticed your email was
Yeah.
different.
Yeah,
on
so it
that
must
one.
be a typo. No, so no, it does not, my email does not have an extra period in it. Before we adjourn, I would like to say one other quick thing. You know, I attended the conference yesterday, and there was so much really great information, but one of the things that really struck out to me, and this applies really to everything that we do and not just to the Main Street, but one of the presenters, listed 7 good practices that help make good organizations, and I just want to kind of just do a 1-minute thing. One is sharing power and decision-making. 2 is prioritizing relationships, and I don't think, when we look back, especially in terms of the, what went on with the Main Street Board, I think that we need to prioritize how we engage with each other, and that goes for everybody in that. We need to unpack and address the past, and we need to talk. We just can't sweep that under the rug and go by it, because that's just going to lead to hard feelings in the end. We need to celebrate our differences and value different opinions and perspectives. Source from multiple experiences and knowledge. Believe and make time for what's important. Believe that there is time to make time for what's important. And to prototype and often and early, try things and see what works and what doesn't work. And don't just say, well, that's not going to work here, and then not do it just because we don't think so. I think that's one of the things that came out of that conference. That's one of the things that really stuck with me, that applies to not only the things we do in Main Street, but the things we do as a council and the things we do as people in our daily lives. So thank you.
Sounds good, thank you.
Just a
Looking
quick
for-
reminder that next month, we'll also be having a consolidated meeting on the 4th because of the Veterans Day holiday. And that is also different than our normal workshop night because of the MML Fall Conference. So just, we'll be
Was it
meeting.
Tuesday or Monday?
We'll be meeting Monday, the 4th,
Monday?
instead of Wednesday, and no meeting on Veterans Day.
Sounds good. Looking for a motion of adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Looking for a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. We're adjourned. Aye.